All right, everyone, I'm excited to introduce my next guest, producer, director, such amazing classics as Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made, Napoleon Dynamite, and most recently, my new favorite documentary, A Disturbance in the Force, the making of the Star Wars Holiday Special. Welcome to the show, Jeremy Coon. Hey,
Yeah. Hey,
how
thanks for
are
having
you?
me.
Well, I know I've been stalking you, so I appreciate you
No,
finding
it's I
time.
appreciate the persistence. I'm glad it worked out. So,
There's certain things like recently I talked to Ann Moses, and she was the um, editor of Tiger Beat in the late early '70s, and that was cool because I every time I talked to like a teen idol, I'd always look up Tiger Beat headlines, and so when I finally got to talk to someone who worked at Tiger Beat, that was pretty awesome. So I've had Bruce Valanche on the show and Lenny Rips. And of course, in both of those interviews, we talked about the Star Wars Holiday Special, which they were writers on and prominently featured in your documentary. So when I saw you made a documentary, that's why I've been like,
yeah,
oh, I got to talk to Jeremy. I've got to talk to Jeremy. So,
yeah. And Bruce and Lenny are great. Like, there's the type of people where you just put the camera on them and just let them talk. Like, you don't even have to try very hard.
yeah, they both have kind of their own little humorous style. And yeah,
Yeah,
and they're super fun to talk to. Never a shortage of stories with either of those folks.
yeah,
And you splice them into the holiday special really well because they each had like a very different role in it, and I think even at different times. I think
yeah. I think there was a little bit of overlap, but it was kind of like, yeah, like Lenny. I mean, Lenny was done more or less. Like, he never visited set, and Bruce was on set the whole time, more or less.
so what is your fascination with creating and making and
Yeah.
cult classics, right? I mean, 20 years now for Napoleon Dynamite, and
Yeah.
so you must be celebrating that.
Yeah, so Sundance is fortunate enough to we're going to do a couple of 20th anniversary screenings. One of them are bringing some people from the help make it a little bit of cast members and just doing yeah, it's going to be fun. It's actually, for those that are interested, it's the 4K restoration of the movie. So I'm kind of curious to see how much better it looks. I'm not sure it'll look that much better because the film stock we used was so grainy because that's kind of all we could afford at the time. Yeah, it's crazy that it's been that long. 20 years is a long time.
Do you have any idea when you were making this movie that it was going to become like that it would resonate like to this? I mean,
Yeah.
I have among a million other people vote for Pedro's shirt, crazy wig, went as Napoleon Dynamite for Halloween one of my years. You know what I mean? So I think
How,
everyone does
that's
that.
that not to age you, but how old were you when you saw it when it came out or when you first saw it?
I don't think I saw it. It's interesting. My relationship with Napoleon Dynamite is interesting. Like, I didn't see it till I think much later. And the first time I watched it, everyone was like, "This is the funniest, greatest movie ever. I can't believe you haven't seen it." I'm like, "I haven't seen it." So we sat down. My wife and I sat down and watched it. And I remember saying to the people who told us to watch it, "I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it." And
Yeah, it's
and they're like, "No, no, no, no. That's why it's so amazing." And then we rewatched it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is hilarious." I just it hit, I mean, the
it's
first time I
it's
watched it.
so funny. That's typically what we hear is a lot of people are like, "Man, I saw it and I did not get it. I hated it." And then somehow someone talked me into watching it again, that I loved it. Which I've always found. I don't think I've ever revisited a movie that I have not liked ever, really, and then liked it. That doesn't happen very often.
What is and then it becomes one of those
Yeah.
movies where you just start watching it from wherever you happen to stumble upon it, if you stumble upon it.
Yeah, like when
um
we made it, we had no clue. Like, I felt we were like, I was 24 at the time, and so it was like Jared and the people we're making it with. We're all kind of like our early mid 20s, first thing we've done, and I felt we were making a movie for us that we knew that like our demographic would like. Uh, I remember during that first Sundance, they were doing high school screenings of the movie, and I was totally worried because I'm just like, there's no way a high school crowd's going to find this movie funny. It's like too close to like it's so you have some perspective on high school. I don't know if this is funny when you're in high school, and we did like a screening for like 1,000 high school students, and like the room just like blew up, and it kind of opened this whole new thing where it's like, oh, this is a movie that appeals to broader than just us. Uh, I mean, it's crazy when we do screenings and like we have people who are now 8 years old, that were not even remotely born when the film came out, and like they're digging in on it. So I mean, for me, the relationship I had with I think a lot of people have is like when Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out, I was way too young to probably really appreciate it. But like that's a film that there's always going to be high school kids that are experiencing that, even if times change. I think that's kind of what hopefully what we tapped into.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing because you made it with no money. It made a ton of money. Like when you think like John Heder like made it didn't the rumor like he made like $1,000 or something. Like
Yeah, I mean that's not entirely true. He was paid scale, which I think was like 2 grand, but I mean he's got back end on the film. It also like launched his career. It led to other projects. I mean, the distributor paid him to kind of do press. I mean, so it's like he didn't make millions off. Like he didn't make as much money for how much attention he got, but he did not get $1,000. He got more than $1,000.
okay. No, yeah, I you're right. I know
Yeah,
yeah, I understand the tangible benefit. It's just funny. It's
yeah.
always funny when you think and then
I've
John
seen I've
Gr-
seen that in multiple theaters where it's like the trivia thing, like how much was John Heater paid for Napoleon Dynamite, and it's like $1,000, and I'm like, I don't know where anyone gets that. I don't know where.
some of these things they just kind of and John Grease is like was in the big in the White Lotus even just of recently. So which was
Yeah, I was texting him last night. I was just like, he's just one of those people where we cast him. So the Uncle Rico, we were trying to get like a star for, and like there was a period of oddly enough we were looking at like Jack Black, but it was just completely unrealistic at the time. And we were leaving to go to Idaho like the next day or two, and we had to have someone cast for Uncle Rico, and like the casting director showed us like his reel, and we're like, he's great, just cast him. We'll see him in Idaho. So like we didn't he didn't audition. We didn't meet him until we were in Idaho to have him be the character. But he's just one of those people that's always fun to have on set and be around. Like he's just a joy.
yeah, I can't imagine anyone else being more perfect than he was. The scene where he's reminiscing about the football, the
Yeah.
playing football,
Well,
so
here's a
good.
funny story. When the film came out, so like Randy Jackson from like American Idol was like a huge star at the time, and like he knew John, and he was at some dinner, and Randy Jackson was just going off on like how great Napoleon Dynamite was, going off and not realizing that John played Uncle Rico because the wig made him look so different. And then find out that his friend is like, he's like, I'm in that. He's like, well, what part did you play? It's like, I'm Uncle Rico. Like, what do you?
That's funny. That's really funny. I mean, usually you hear that when there's prosthetics involved, maybe.
Yeah. Well, oddly, that the wig really does kind of transform the way he appears because I mean, he's bald, fully bald, most of the time, and he just looks completely different.
So many great things about Napoleon Dynamite. It's one of those movies you almost like have to rewatch the dancing scene. I mean, it's like there's just so much. Just love it. And his
Yeah. So we
voice.
did. To answer your question, we did not think it was going to be as successful as it was, and I'm still amazed the fact 20 years later that it still has this lasting power. Like I had this theory that like if films last 10 years, they're going to last forever. And I kind of feel we've broken out from that because a lot of films after like 5 years, you kind of just forget about. It's just the life cycle of how many like there's so much product out there. It's hard to break out.
Yeah, Napoleon Dynamite is definitely one of those movies that I think every generation, because it was my mother-in-law that was when I was talking about it, it was my
Yeah,
mother-in-law. No, I'm sorry, it was my stepmom who was like telling me about it. So it was like, it's I think it's transcended. It's there forever. So you got that one. With the Star Wars holiday special, like
yeah,
what's your background just in that in general? Like everyone who's a fan of Star Wars kind of just has the background, meaning like, are we aware of it? Had you seen it? Did you just used to scope it out on YouTube? Like what
yeah. I
was
mean, So I was I don't remember not being a Star Wars fan. I was born in '79, so it's the year after the special. But like the first toys I remember playing with were Star Wars figurine, like action figures, because that's what my brothers had. And like the first movie I ever seen in the theaters, Return of the Jedi, when I was about 4. Uh, so I've always been. I'm not obsessive to the point where I like dress up all the time, but I mean I know the world. So I mean I kind of heard rumors about the holiday special, but it's kind of I mean it's kind of like the Raiders tape when I did that. It's just like people talk about it, but it was hard to find at the time, and I wasn't quite certain if it was real. But like a friend gave me a copy of the holiday special on DVD in like 2002. I watched maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I wasn't convinced that it was real at that point. I was kind of like, this feels like it's a joke. Like someone has managed to take like elements of Star Wars and mixed it in with maybe some variety stuff and made it look like it was a real TV special. But like, I can't, I was like, I can't imagine this actually aired. And then just, didn't really think about it for, after that. I kept the DVD, but never finished it. And then I felt around the like YouTube comes out and like this holiday special is readily available because then it's just not on bootlegs. And especially in like I say, for some reason there's an inflection point around 2010 where it becomes much less underground and more of this like pop culture reference where like people always like to reference it. Like, Mark Hamill's doing tweets about it. It's this kind of like fun thing to talk about. And that's what really appealed to one. I was interested in that aspect of it because it was such a part of like popular culture, and like no one really knew, and no one had done like a deep dive on like how this actually happened. Because like in my mind, I was like, there has to be reasons why this was a good idea in '78, and in retrospective, it does not look that good. But like there had to be like no one went into this knowing it was a bad decision, and just kind of figuring out. And when we got in the world of like '70s TV, that's where I was like, oh, this is so much fun because like there's so much bad variety TV that we can show, like just kind of give a sense of what the time was. That kind of really opened up the film.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, like, right? 1977, Star Wars comes out. It's the biggest thing ever, right?
Yeah,
It just blows everything away. And it's interesting because in the documentary, you talk about just the psychology of how they did this groundswell and created fans before the movie even came out
yeah,
to get them interested in Star Wars, and they created such a satiable appetite for Star Wars and everything that they were afraid everyone would fall off the cliff and forget
yeah,
all about them by the time The Empire Strikes Back comes out in 1980. There's at the time, right? There's no internet, there's no social media, there's nothing really to do it. So
yeah,
somebody comes up with the idea, which brilliant on paper. Let's do a holiday special.
yeah. I mean, it's like I always say this. It's like it would have been weird for them not to do something like this. Like, it's the other thing too. It's not like they went cheap on this. Like they paid $1 million, hired the best people that had done TV specials, and got the biggest stars they could at the time, and it was just destined never to work. But at the time, like it's exactly what you would do to market it because that's how stuff was marketed. Like if you had any notoriety, you did a TV special. Didn't matter if you were a football player and you couldn't sing, dance, or act, they would give you something to do and fill up with stars. Like, and it's just a fun time. I also feel a lot of it at the time is like who's available. Let's throw them in the special and mix these people up. Like we don't show this, but like Kiss on the Paul Lynde Halloween special, I think it's hilarious because it's just so bizarre to have Kiss in that world performing like normally. But yeah, it's I don't know. It would have been fun to been alive at that time just to experience that.
Well, it was interesting because one of the kind of threads or themes is that as bad as the Star Wars holiday special was, this is what 70s variety TV was.
Yeah,
So in comparison, it was all bad. And specifically, I love that you showed the Paula holiday Halloween special because one day I was just kind of flipping through and Am at my Fire Stick said, "Hey, you should watch this," and I did. I watched the Paulin Halloween special, and like you said, it has Kiss, which is so out of place, but they're
yeah,
rocking this hot. It had Witchy Poo in it, and the woman from Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West, and I mean, it's these
Is that
seven.
actually her from, or is it someone playing her? I've never
No,
actually looked into it. That's actually, it's so weird. It's like,
yeah, well, because they're yeah, because they were alive then. You don't think
yeah,
they were that special in itself is so horrible, but it's so great because it's so bad, right? I mean, it's there's something to it, and I guess at the time this must have been enjoyed by people. It's like you think
people,
aliens would land here and they'd have a whole group of people just to
yeah.
investigate
I mean,
this.
to me also is like, you got to understand like your demographic at the time, where it's kind of like the holiday special. If you were between like 5 and 10 when it came out, you thought it was the greatest thing ever, because it was the only time that you, because back then it's like you have 3 channels, there's no home video other than seeing the movie in a theater. This is all the Star Wars you were going to get. So if you were between 5 and 10, you were ecstatic to see like Han Solo and Chewbacca and like all this other stuff, and you didn't care. Like seeing a dance scene you might have thought sucked, but like you had no alternative. And I kind of feel that's what TV was, where it's like you have 3 options. If you want to watch the Brady Brunch Variety Hour or like Love Boat or whatever, like these are your options, or you can go read or do something else. But I mean, it's just completely foreign to what it's like now, where we have so much content that's so readily available. Uh, I mean, it's almost, I mean, it's the opposite problem, where stuff gets lost that you just don't see it.
So you're right. It's interesting. So November 17th, 1978, the holiday special airs. Lenny Rips has a funny comment in the documentary. I think he mentioned it when I was talking to him as well. Is that they really thought this was going to be their meal ticket? Like this was going to play
His
every
annuity.
year.
That's
Yeah,
what,
it's going to play every year, like the every Charlie Brown special, and all that kind of stuff. And this thing aired one time, which in itself is interesting to think like how popular Star Wars must have been at that time. That and is I don't think VCRs were that prevalent at the time. VCRs, if I remember correctly, a good one cost $800. I mean, it was like
it might have been
insane.
more than that. Like you had to be very rich to have like a beta or a VHS. So like they were around, but it was definitely not prevalent. I mean, I want to say it might have even cost like $2,000 in 1978 dollars. I mean, it was like buying a car or something. Like it was expensive.
Yeah, it was very so to think that it survived because that's really the way it survived. Somebody captured it, and then at some point, that person realized they had it at some point, and then started distributing it. I was like
Yeah,
you, where I don't know, 15 or so years ago, a friend of mine gave it to me on DVD, and it was like, I had heard of it and all that kind of stuff, but and then you watch it. I'm impressed you got through 15 minutes of it.
yeah. I mean, once you have like the 10 minutes of like Wookiee speak with no sense of what's going on, I'm just like, this is like someone's taking the sound and dubbed this and taking the subtitles out, because like there's no way that this is just going on endlessly. That
Yep.
around that mark is where I tuned out. So it was probably around the 15-minute mark.
I Yeah, it was fascinating actually in the documentary where you talked about how they wouldn't use captions and like that there was some like stigma with it or something like that. And I got
That
to say,
America was too, yeah, America was too dumb to want to read subtitles because they were lazy. I'm like, I don't know how true that. I mean, you also got to think TV at the time too was also like not high quality. It's like the 3x4, it's probably a little bit harder to read subtitles on that. I mean, I think there's some truth to it, but I think the thing is like George was just adamant that he didn't want subtitles for whatever reason.
what was sort of the impetus where you're like, all right, let's make a documentary about the Star Wars holiday special. And then what's the process of making one of these documentaries? You kind of gotta storyboard it out, then you go get somebody to help finance it, like sell the idea, because you got to get rights to all this stuff too, right?
I don't worry about any of that beginning. So it's more kind of like the reason why I like documentaries is you can just kind of explore a little bit and see what's there. So like to me, the first starting point is like I think this is interesting. I have questions to which there are not answers readily available. So like to me, that's like the starting point. If I have that, it's like, oh, well, let's go do some interviews. So like Lenny Rips was one of the first people we interviewed. And it was during his interview where I was like, all right, there's stuff here. If we can go and talk to other people from the production, like he was the one that really because we went and did like 3 days of interviews. We did like it was not to sound too morbid, but we kind of hit the people that we were concerned might die, of which none of those people have died, oddly enough. But like they were older and then like memories fade and you never know how someone's health's going to be. But we knocked out as many of those out as we could and kind of gave us a base to kind of go on. But the other thing too, like when you're making these, it's kind of like being a journalist to some degree, where it's like you're asking questions, you're doing research and digging into it, and you have an idea of where you think it might go, but you need to be open to things that might surprise you or things that you thought were the case that end up being wrong. Uh, so to me, that's just part of the documentary process is just kind of rolling with it. And like, as you do more and more interviews, I mean, I think we interviewed like 50 people. Those interviews lead to other interviews, and then you can kind of piece stuff together. I mean, like the first cut was heavily Lenny Rips and Bruce Valanche because they were the ones that had the most core, and we didn't want to have to the point where it's kind of awkward to have the film be that heavy on them. So we kind of filtered in other people to cover similar topics that made sense. So yeah, I mean, it was ended up being like a 4-year process. COVID came in the middle of it, which kind of derailed it for about a year and a half. But I mean, we made this completely independently. And when it comes back to the rights, I mean, we claim fair use on this, and I've gone through it enough on documentaries where we've had enough commentary, and like we didn't push the envelope on any usage. So when the fair use lawyer did his review to sign off and everything, he only had like 2 small tweaks. So that's always the most nerve-wracking process is like, am I so off? How off base are we compared to, because the lawyer has to basically give the okay to make it okay.
Right. And you're probably in a good spot, right? You're like, what's George Lucas going to do? He doesn't admit that this exists, so he can't claim that you're using
Well,
his.
I mean, the
I'm
other thing
kidding,
is
but
like,
you know what I mean. But
yeah, but I mean, it's been on YouTube for like 15 years and they've
right,
never done
right.
anything about it. So like, you want to, I mean, part of like this is like you got to incur damages, and it's like, well, it's just out there and you're not selling. Like, it's not. And to me, that's also what makes it fun. Is like if Disney Plus did like a formal release and put it out, it actually for me would kind of spoil the fun of it. It's like being in on the joke. I kind of like its place. Like it annoys them a little bit, and they try to ignore it, and that's just it makes it more enjoyable for all of us fans to kind of poke at it.
I heard the Boba Fett cartoon is on
Yeah,
Disney Plus, but
that's on Disney Plus.
the rest of it is not. And I agree with you 100%. As soon as if it was 1,000% mainstream like Disney Plus, then it just becomes like a piece of garbage, not like this special horrible thing that we all love.
Yeah, I
So
like. I
what?
still. I really don't love it. It's kind of like I appreciate its uniqueness and like place in history, but like I've had to watch it like 6 times beginning to end, and like every time it's hard. It's
Oh,
like
no, I meant love a
yeah.
little more abstractly than that. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
okay.
I can't watch it either. It's unwatchable. But the amazing thing about the documentary is how you made an amazing documentary about something completely unwatchable, but you made an extremely enjoyable and watchable documentary that incorporates
Well,
it
thanks.
enough where you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I think I do want to go. I'm going to go check this out. You know what I mean? I'm going to go torture myself and I'm going to go watch the full Jefferson Airplane video, or I'm going to go watch the whole Diane Carroll soft porn Wookiee scene. I got to find the whole thing, where you just teased it
Well,
all
I mean,
enough.
that's probably the impetus for the documentary. Where I was like, what's the story behind that scene? Because someone thought that was like we couldn't get into it too much because I couldn't find any audio of it. But like, I'm pretty sure there's an interview that Mitzi Weltz did in print where she said that like we were just screwing with the censors to see what we can get away with, and like no one flagged it, which is shocking because you're just kind of like, there has to be that because like you're doing this kids program of this like softcore erotica porn. It's so weird. It's like so strange.
It's one of the most bizarre things. So, all right. So, what I'm getting from your earlier comment is there is a hashtag rips Valanche cut. We can go all Zack
Somewhere, but like,
Snyder on you and like release the rips Valanche cut.
no, I mean their whole interview. I mean, both of their interviews were probably like an hour, hour and a half, and like I said, like it's great talking to people. Like a lot of these interviews, we just have to like throw out a question and then step back and get out of their way. Like Kevin Smith was that way. Like Pat Oz, like all these people are just like they're professionally funny, and all you can do is get in their way. Uh, yeah, but like someone was asking, like, why don't we have more extras on the Blu-ray? And I'm like, we don't really have any. Like, I started to put some together, and I'm like, everything we like is in the movie. There's not some like, oh, I would have loved to. Like every movie I've done, I'm like, oh, I would have loved to have the scene in, but it throws the timing off, or it's too like people don't care. At the end of the day, that like everything we thought was interesting is in it. So there's stuff we can pull out, just felt kind of lame putting it together, like we're just trying to create extras out of nothing.
All right, I respect that. So,
Yeah.
what surprised you when you were researching, interviewing, putting this together?
The most surprising thing to me is that so when I set out in this, I was kind of like, oh, Lucas is such a jerk. He just needs to own this. I was kind of like, I feel like a lot of friends, like a lot of fans are, where it's not necessarily anti Lucas, but kind of like, come on, man, you're being lame about this. And through the course of making the movie, I have way more empathy for his position, knowing what was going on at the time, where he's like, he's made the most successful movie of all time. He's like 33. He has everything at his disposal. Like he's everything, anything he wants to do, he can do. And he decides to leverage his entire net worth to do Empire. Where if Empire doesn't happen, he basically goes bankrupt. And like that's his priority. And then he has like other stuff going on, and like he has like American Graffiti 2 is like a side note, and but in the middle of all this, and he's trying to get the merchandising off the ground. And in the meantime, someone's like, "Hey, you should do a holiday special." And he's like, "Oh, great! It'll help sell toys." And he talks on it for a day, and then goes back to Empire. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do in that situation where it's just like you have much bigger fish to fry than what the holiday special is? At the end of the day, I also view if you do the holiday special, I mean, there's also this weird thing about Star Wars where you have like the films and the TV shows that are all like very sacred, and then you have this like marketing engine where they'll slap Star Wars on everything, and they're kind of like two parallel tracks that go on. And if you do the holiday special more as like on the marketing side as opposed to like a film, it makes more sense. So that's the kind of I was surprising looking at it that way, where it's like, yeah, this it makes sense why this happened and why they did it. And at the end of the day, I would have to argue it was probably successful in what it set out to do. I mean, while it's not good, 13 million people watched it. The toys were available that first Christmas for the first time, and I can only assume it helped sell more toys going into Christmas.
Yeah, did you get a feeling of anyone who remembered it at the time? Like, because at the time, it probably everyone was like, "Oh, Star Wars." I mean, like, I know in the
Yeah,
Goldbergs clip, they immediately the boy immediately didn't like it, but I'm sure it was
yeah.
like
No,
weird for people. But
if you as I said, like if you were 5 to 10, like you thought it was while not like amazing, like you really enjoyed it because it's the only Star Wars you're going to get until 1980. I mean, if you're if you're 7, that's a long time to wait. You're going to wait 3 years to see something new. Uh, but if you were older than 10, you kind of were. Even if you're older than 10, you were clearly kind of like, hey, something's not right here. That's kind of, to me, that's where the cutoff is. Like if you're like 11, 12, 13, you're kind of like, I like the. I mean, I'm happy to be watching this, but like something's off.
there's a disturbance in the force, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
so that's right. It was funny because like it seemed that Peter Mayhew was the only person that you had a clip of saying that he actually was. I don't know if he said proud, but he didn't have a negative thing to say about
He was
being in
proud
this.
of it. We have an audio recording of like an interview he did on the phone in like 90 was 98. None of it was like particularly it was a strange phone call. I'll leave it at that. But he was very like proud of it, and he's like I mean, it's basically Chewbacca's starring role. Like that's the one thing where it's like it's all around the Wookiee family and Chewbacca. So I mean, there's also like this rumor that they were gonna. This was like a test program to then do a Chewbacca TV series or like a Wookiee TV series where Chewbacca would kind of come in periodically. I actually don't think that's true. What I think it was, I think someone in the executive was like, "Hey, we spent all this money on this set. Maybe we can use this for a TV show if it's successful." And I think that's where it stopped because once the special came out, there was no sense that they were ever going to revisit it.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Although a Wookiee TV series would have been interesting. I don't know.
It would have been. It would have been. So how did you pick the folks like Seth Green? I think that's a good one. How did you get him to be in? I know he works with Lucas on his shows that he
Yeah.
does. But.
Yeah. So Seth was the top of the list of people I wanted to interview that weren't directly like involved in the making of it. And fortunately enough, like our producer Kyle Newman's friends with him and reached out to him and Seth was like, "Oh, I'm all in. What do you need?" Like I love talking about the special. And he was just like an open book. Like he was just an open book. I mean, the other thing about Seth is like I would say Seth is the next best. He's the next best person to interview other than Lucas because he's like one of the few people who I feel has talked to Lucas at length about this and worked with him. Like a Star Wars Detour show. I mean, I don't know how many years they spent making that, but like he was with Lucas for long periods of time talking and just kind of like hanging out. So like that's it was really interesting. To me, that's where the more empathy for Lucas came from, is from Seth giving his perspective on how Lucas has reacted to it. Because I feel it's probably the most honest you're going to get. I don't even know if Lucas himself, if we sat down and interviewed him, would be that open or honest about it. So that was really enlightening. So that but fortunately we had a connection to Seth and he was willing to do it. But like everyone we reached out to, like no one really said no. Like all the people we reached out to were like, "Yeah, let's make this happen. I want to support it. I want to be a part of this." And that kind of comes to the kind of fandom I think that Star Wars has, where people enjoy being a part of this and just kind of, it's just fun at the end of the day.
Well, like Taron Killam, what was his connection?
That was strictly so our producer Kyle Newman's also friends with him. And oddly enough, I was not like I was kind of like, well, I mean, I like Taron, but like, what's his connection other than being a Star Wars fan? And when he started doing his interview, I was just like, he had so many like funny bits and just takes, and it was just that kind of goes to the same thing where it's like if you get interviews with funny people who are professionally funny and give them a topic to riff on, they will inevitably come up with fun stuff. Because that's where I kind of feel with the comedians we pulled in was like we needed more humor because I mean Bruce Valanche and Lenny Rips were funny, but like a lot of these people are just kind of older and drier that were actually like making the special. So it was kind of nice to filter in commentary to kind of lighten things up and keep the jokes going.
Gilbert Gottfried's last film role. You got him. How was it?
As far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my directing partner, Steve Kozak, works for the Jimmy Kimmel Show, and he had a connection to Gilbert, and we just did that interview remotely. But yeah, he was down for it, and I think he was in Florida when we shot it. But like that was like he was our first star, I would say, where it's just like named like, "Hey, we got Gilbert Gottfried."
That's awesome.
but he also did like he had a connection where he had done a podcast about the Star Wars Holiday Special, like with Bruce Valanche, and had like talked at length about it for like an hour and a half. So like he had a lot of funny bits and like he was familiar with it. It wasn't just like out of the blue.
Yeah, no, he made sense. Because his colossal podcast, he goes very deep into a lot of pop culture. His is one of that's one of the things I miss now that he's gone is new episodes of that podcast because him and his co-star of that podcast, they go deep. They do their research, so you can appreciate it because a lot of folks don't. And
he has in his interview, he has like a 5-minute like aristocrats like filthy joke he does on the Star Wars Holiday Special, which if we're gonna do an extra, that would probably be the extra. But it's like it is filthy. Like it is.
I can imagine he's known for the other
Yeah.
non-Star Wars filthy one. So I loved the thread of Donny Osmond. Now, I don't know if this is what you intended, but this is what I took from the
Yeah.
Donny Osmond thread, was that in a way he represented what we would hope George Lucas would be in terms of coming to grips with something that they didn't enjoy being a part of, Donnie Marie show for Donny Osmond, but then later coming to grips that it was okay to be okay and embrace that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we wanted to do. So I'm glad it worked out. I mean,
You nailed it.
here's the way. Yeah, here's the way I look at
I'm
the
usually
holiday
not that
special.
deep, so for me
Yeah.
to
No, Donnie was one of those people we interviewed, and it was just so refreshing to have him be like, just cool about it. He's like, yeah, it exists. I don't like it, but like, it is what it is. I mean, it's what it was during that time I kind of came with this idea where it's like, if you look at the Star Wars holiday special as like, I don't know, the 8th or ninth grade yearbook of Star Wars, like no one's cool in middle school. Like no one's like looks great. And it's kind of like you're embarrassed about it, but like we don't burn our yearbooks, pretend like they don't exist. Like we usually kind of look at it and be like, oh, look, what I was wearing was ridiculous, or what I thought was cool was, man, the times have changed and I just didn't know better. And like, it's kind of like this Star Wars adolescence where they didn't know what Star Wars was yet during this weird time. So it was just going with what, you know, like I wore Z Cavaricci pants in like 5th or 6th grade, if that means anything, or like the big puffy hammer pants, because that's what we
kamikaze
did.
shirts.
Yeah, it was just like, and like, fortunately, there's not a whole lot of photos floating around, but like, yeah, like I'm not proud of that, but I'm not going to pretend like I didn't do it.
I had Cavaricci pants too.
Yeah, they were like, I can't believe my parents, it was like $100 back in like 89 or whenever it was. And I'm just like, I was like a fat kid too. So it's like, they weren't actually flattering. It was just, I don't know. It was not a good look. Yeah. And they all had like a million pleats at the front.
I know. They were quite the fashion statement.
Yeah.
So the other awesome thing that I loved in it was Jon Favreau talking about how that Boba Fett cartoon from the Star Wars Holiday Special influenced the Mandalorian. I will say, I
Yeah.
was like, I remember watching the Mandalorian, going, "Oh, that's the same disintegration weapon from the cartoon." And in my head, I was like, "Oh, I bet that's where they got it," having no idea. So it was nice to hear him say that, and like him referencing Life Day, and in one episode, it was really cool that for something that's so forgotten and underground, like how it's still
Yeah.
part of culture.
Well, I can't remember how old Favreau was at the time, but he was somewhere around like 8 or 10. So like, it's funny that like Dave Filoni and him, or like people like that, are now making Star Wars content because they're going to pull from what they grew up with. So they have especially like a soft spot in their heart for the Star Wars Holiday Special because like they were the exact demographic when they made it. And I love that clip too because it's like sometimes on my camera, someone basically asks George Lucas about the Star Wars Holiday Special, and you can tell he's not totally thrilled to be talking about it. And that was from like the extras on Mandalorian, with some like series. And I remember I found that, I'm like, oh, that has to go in the movie.
uh, when you were putting together a documentary, like when you start interviewing Lenny and Bruce, then when you're creating a documentary, do you then kind of just start to form the arc? I remember like talking about The Aristocrats, the movie,
Yeah,
and they were talking about like when they filmed George Carlin, that's when they knew they had the movie. It was Paul Provenza I was talking to, and that's when they knew they had the movie because everything he gave, and then they could start to
yeah.
create structure around that. So Lenny Rips sort of gave you the out, but then what was your hopes? What was like the journey you hope the person who maybe has never seen the holiday special, but is going to watch this documentary out of curiosity because they're a current Star Wars fan? Like, what was your goal? Like, is your like what were you hoping to have
I mean, to
someone
me,
walk away with?
the biggest goal was to create a time capsule of what 1978 was like at that time in the TV world. Like that was kind of because like I wasn't familiar with that, and like most people I know aren't. It's just we weren't old enough at the time to really know. So to create that kind of world and give a sense, to me, that really opened the film up to a broader audience. So like just from a pop culture standpoint, the Star Wars Holiday Special is like a hook for people, but to pull them in, I mean, like Napoleon, this is a thing I thought was strictly for Star Wars fans. It's crossed over to a number of people that I thought in a million years wouldn't like this because, like, I've had people who are adamantly dislike Star Wars or just are indifferent, but they love revisiting this time period because they remember what the '70s was like. And yeah, I mean, because we kind of opened the film up where it's like we set the. Also, another thing I want to do is Charlie Lippincott is kind of this unsung hero of Star Wars from the marketing perspective, and I felt this was a way to kind of tell his story that hasn't he doesn't get the credit I feel he's due, and I feel this is a way to kind of give him the credit because he was part of this whole marketing. The marketing he did kind of led to the holiday special, but he's also responsible for Star Wars being as successful as it is. So I mean that was a big piece, but and then after that first half hour, it's kind of just going into the highlights of the holiday special and getting some backstory, like kind of it's so that ends kind of more of a traditional doc. But the first half hour is where we really spend a lot of time molding it to kind of appeal to a broader audience. And also, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who just don't know. They think that Star Wars came out and was just like by some miracle, like a lottery ticket, was just successful, and they don't know how much work and legwork went into to actually make it successful.
Who made the poster? Because I gotta tell you, the poster for this movie is
No,
unbelievable.
it's Danny Tinarelli. She is. You can buy it on Etsy. There's a link on our website. But so that was designed before we made the movie, and we interview. So we interview her at the end. She's the one that's holding the poster up, talking about the commercials over the credits. But we told her like we're like, can we use your poster? And she's just like, yeah, have at it. And I'm like, well, what do you want for it? She's like, oh, whatever you want to pay me, it's fine. And just like she's super cool about it. And but yeah, I mean, it's a full on like fan made poster that probably pre-exists us making this by at least a couple of years. But it's perfect. It's exactly the kind of look we want, and it's yeah, we're really fortunate to have it.
Yeah, it really you can look at that and it really captures the Star Wars holiday special in a poster.
Yeah,
It was
no, it's fun. There's a really cool Japanese one that's fan made, but it's not as this one fits better to give an idea of what the special is.
so the you do the award circuit then? Is that what's the I know you can anyone listening, you can get this on demand on Google Play and Vudu and Prime Video, Apple TV. You can buy Blu-ray or buy the DVD at disturbanceintheforce.com. You can
Yeah.
head over there and buy all that. What was your marketing plan inspired by the Star Wars genius that you were showcasing to
I don't
get?
know. It's totally grassroots roots. I mean, like, we did like the festival circuit to build reviews. So we've premiered at South by Southwest, and like we've been fortunate to play at some really prime film festivals. But a lot of it's just organic and fan support. Yeah, I mean, like I reached like Richard Roper did an interview, like a review of it that was super nice, but it was just kind of like, hey, you should check out our movie. Are you willing to, And he's just like, yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'll check it out. But it's just kind of like it's that and just kind of organic growth. But like the thing that's amazing, so I never in a million years thought that like if I did a documentary on the Star Wars Holiday Special, it would be the best reviewed movie of anything I've been involved with. Like we're certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with 100%, and I'm like, I thought for sure we're gonna get some people that are just like, why would anyone care about this and just dismiss it? And that hasn't. There's still time for it to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. But like, it's just, yeah, I feel like the fan support has just really been behind us to make it, but we don't have anything formally organized. We're not spending, we haven't spent hardly any money on actual like ads or marketing. It's just all organic.
Other
So
than
Charlie Lippincott would probably be disappointed in our marketing approach. We actually got the lottery ticket, but we didn't.
besides people that maybe reached out or interviewed, is anyone in the Star Wars universe contacted you or your crew in any way and said, "Oh, this is awesome"?
Yeah, I mean, so like Mark Hamill watched the movie, really liked it. We got really close to interviewing him, but I feel at the end of the day, he's just kind of promised Lucas that this is not something that it's weird because like he'll talk about it, like he's on archive talking about it, but he doesn't want to do like a formal sit down interview because it came down to like I'll interview, but I can't talk at all about the Star Wars holiday special. And I'm like, well, that's going to be difficult, I think, to do an interview to talk around it. And then,
for a documentary on that
yeah,
movie or that show.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just kind of like, let's just let it go. I mean, I kind of prefer having the cast talk in the archival because it kind of feels more, I don't know, it feels more truthful and real to me as opposed to someone like knowing that they're going to have to talk about this and then coming up with something. We've had some people that actually work with Lucasfilm that like love the movie, which is funny if it ever kind of trickles up to the higher ups there because we approached them early on and went all the way up to the top, and like the answer we got back was that it's too soon for Lucasfilm to be directly involved in a Star Wars holiday special documentary.
Too
Which
soon.
yeah, I've always just like I read into that as like as long as George Lucas is alive, maybe it's an off limits topic. But I also feel like I actually don't think Lucas cares at this point. Like he doesn't enjoy talking about it, but it's not like it keeps him up at night or like he gives it two thoughts. We have the quote in the movie where he talks about like, look, he's like I've spent more time talking about the holiday special than I ever did working on it, and I kind of feel that to some degree that's true.
Well, at least the folks around him, like in The Mandalorian, are embracing pieces of it, though they are embracing the one
Yeah.
piece that is the greatest. Maybe he was just upset that Life Day never caught on like Festivus.
Well, it has caught on now, so he got his wish. I
Yeah.
mean, here's the other thing. Like, I mean, like Disney's marketing. Here, I'll pull this up. Let's see. I mean, it doesn't get much more than that. I mean, it's like a Life Day Wookiee says Life Day on it. I mean, yeah, but they have like Life Day merchandise at the parks. So I mean, they are embracing it to some degree, and like you said, it's on like the animated segments on Disney Plus. So they're
Well,
slowly embracing it as long as they can make money on it.
that's always the key. So what's Jeremy, what's next for you? What's your next project?
So I mainly do. I don't direct terribly often, but like the next movie I'm producing is documentary on the comedian Gallagher. We've been working on it for about 3 years. It's not what people are going to expect, but it's super interesting. Like he lived a very unique life. It was more, and he's more complicated than I think people give him credit for.
Yeah, good. Didn't he have a whole thing where like his brother kind of took his act, Gallagher too, and
Yep, we
Mark
found his
Maron?
brother. We've talked to. Yeah, it's it's an interesting story. Yeah, he had his brother like do his act, but the idea was going to be like Gallagher too, and then the idea was supposed to compete with Carrot Top because his manager became Carrot Top's manager, and like we interviewed Carrot Top a couple of months ago, but it's anyway, we're hoping to have that done probably that we started its festival circuit maybe later this year.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Well, congratulations on a disturbance in the force. How the Star Wars holiday special happened. It's amazing. I really loved
thanks.
it. I really
Well,
do.
thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
It was one of those where I saw I think when I originally reached out to you, all it was, it hadn't come out yet. And so
Yeah,
I was excited just by the idea of it. And you lived up to it 1,000%. 1,000%. It was
well,
probably,
thanks.
yeah, it was so good. I encourage everybody to go watch this documentary. So I'll put links in the show notes, all that kind of good stuff. So,
Okay, well, awesome, man. I really appreciate it.
Jeremy, thanks for hanging out with me and sharing some of these stories. I appreciate it. Appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, we'll see you. Take care.
Cool.
It was fun.